Do you have a dream that is a small seed of an idea and it's ready to sprout?
Or are you in the workplace weeds and you need to bloom in a new creative way?
Perhaps you're ready to embrace and grow a more vibrant, joyful, and authentic life. If you answered yes to any of these, you are ready to rebloom. Welcome to the podcast where we have enlightening chats with nature lovers, makers, and artisans as they share inspiring stories about pivoting to a heart-centered passion.
Hello, I'm Lori Siebert, and I am very curious to hear from friends and artisans about the creativity that blooms when you follow your heart.
And I'm Jamie Jameson, and I want to dig deep into the why behind each courageous leap of faith and walk through new heart-centered gardens.
Each episode of ReBloom will be an in-depth conversation with guests who, through self-discovery, shifted to share their passions with the world.
Get ready to find your creative joy as we plant the seeds for you to rebloom.
Oh, Jamie. Oh my God. I just want to go and hang out with Todd in his Pennsylvania home and make stuff because that's been my savior my whole life, is being this little maker, because I was always very, very shy, still am very introverted. So there's nothing better to me than being with my grandkids and pulling out some clay or teaching them to crochet or whatever. And I just really love that he's focusing on that for children, because if we can instill that in kids more and more, they really need it. They need it for mental health reasons. They need it for anxiety. They need it for community. It's just something that is sorely, sorely needed. And I just can't wait to get some of the new products he has and share those with my family. Because we have been blessed, like he described his family. I've been blessed to have support from mine. And I just hope that people that don't feel like they have that can find that in themselves somehow.
I would agree. And I think it's so beautiful that the seeds of his creativity were planted in his living room on that table, and they continue. And he's not only brought the joy that he experienced as a child, he's bringing that joy that he experienced as a child to other families. And yes, you can become a big designer and you can know stars and be very famous, but when you look back, it's really how you touched other lives and how you have helped people to grow, or you've made them feel, and to make a child feel that they can succeed and they can feel that they can create joy in the world. I don't know that there's any better gift. And what a beautiful man he is, and how special. And what a joy to have him on our show.
Oh, aren't we lucky? Lucky day. I'm going to be smiling the rest of the day.
As am I. And we hope our listeners will when they listen to Todd and his story. Thank you so much, everyone. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another very special episode of ReBloom. This episode is going to be colorful, magical, and exciting. Hi, Lori.
Oh my God, Jamie, I'm about losing my mind today because we are interviewing one of my longtime design heroes. And I'm a little nervous. I'm kind of shaking a little bit. So this is going to be so much fun to talk to him.
I cannot wait. Well, I will let you go ahead and do the introductions. I'm equally as excited, and I can't wait to hear his journey. And go ahead.
Okay, well, this man was an incredible fashion designer. His work is so whimsical, and the materials he used are unconventional and just so inspiring. And then moved on to, he's done a product line for Target. He's written books about some of my very favorite people, Charlie Harper, who I happened to have as a visiting professor when I was in college, which was amazing. Ed Emberley, which is an illustrator who I adore, Alexander Girard. I mean, all of the things that he's into,
On and
I'm
on.
into. So that's just going to be so fun to hear. And one little quick story about Todd Oldham is that
He's our guest.
he's our guest. Years ago, I was doing these things called crafternoons where I would have artists come to our studio and we would make things and throughout the year. And then we had a big auction at the end of the year and donated money to children's charities. And I reached out to several people who I admired, who I knew were philanthropic, and Todd was one of them. And he kindly donated some product for the auction. And then one day, when he closed his fashion business, a truck pulled up in front of my studio with fabrics and buttons and all kinds of things from his studio, raw materials that I lost my mind. So
Amazing.
I've been following him. I went to his Wexner show. I read his books. I have my grandson using his handmade modern weaving kit. So I just can't wait to hear his story. Hello, Todd.
I can't wait. Well, let's welcome him. Hi, Todd.
Hello, thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you for those kind words. It's so nice to see you both, or hear you both, I guess.
Yeah, well, we see you, but they don't.
We get to enjoy seeing your beautiful space. Well, welcome to our podcast, and we're so excited to hear your journey. And can we go back to maybe the seeds? Can we go ahead, Lord? You have some, I know, some specific questions too.
Well, when that truck thing happened and all of those things happened, I got the pleasure of talking with your sister Robin, and she described your family as the Waltons on crack, which I never forgot. And I know by just following you that you come from very creative roots. So can you tell us a little bit about what it was growing up in the Oldham household?
Yes, well, that's not terribly untrue. What my sister said, we grew up. I mean, it was all very normal to me, but I realized in hindsight that how special it was that community and making and proximity, hanging out, like those were the things that were important. So like we had a TV, but no one paid attention to it because we had a craft table in our living room that we just made stuff all the time, every day. You know,
That's neat.
So I've always felt that for my artistic endeavors, that they're the most fruitful for me personally when I'm doing them. Like, you know, once I finish, they then go to many other people's hands, and their success might be deemed by like retail sales, which doesn't have anything to do with me. So I've been very present during the making, and that's kind of, as a maker, that's all you really have. You know, the real version of it is that joy when you get to see an idea bubble up like that. It's a real pleasure.
Oh my God, I so agree with that. And I too have many craft tables in our household, and our kids always grew up with that, and now our grandkids. And there's just something I see in my grandchildren now. There's just a real calmness that happens, and calmness mixed with curiosity, mixed with joy when they're creating.
That's the recipe, isn't it?
Yeah, and to grow up in that environment is pretty amazing. So you went on to, I believe you made your first collection when you were like 15. Is that right?
Well, I started not quite that young. I made my first one when I was 18. But I got mono in high school and had to stay in bed for about 6 weeks. So I taught myself to bead during that time. And it was really fruitful because that kind of, that propelled me during my fashion career for over a decade, frankly. But I just loved to make stuff, whether it was a pie or we were rewiring the walls in our garage, or we were painting, or whatever. It just the joy of being near a magic trick. You know, this idea that blooms or reblooms right in front of you. You know, that's the loveliest thing for me, is to get to be near that jangle when something's created. You know.
There is nothing better than just getting your hands on something, and I so agree with that. My creative joy, Todd, comes from flowers. I have found that, but I love flowers. I love creating with them. but it's just actually physically touching something and doing something. And I think I'm prayerful that we will all go back to that, and that children will have a lot more time doing that, because I think that's where you grow exponentially in so many ways. And what a blessing to have had that as a child, to have that craft table in your living room.
I also feel that creating is so therapeutic, and we're recording this at a time where I feel like even more creativity and kindness and connectivity and all of those things are going to be ever more important. Just wanted to throw that in there.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's in times, well, depending on your point of view, and I don't think we want to turn this in any political doctrine, but in times of super challenging social situations, I've always found that the artists are the salve and the winners here, because we are the ones that can create new pathways and new connectivity and rebuild through the things that make us human. And right now we've slipped away from a lot of those. So I have full faith. Just in that, I'm an older man now, and I lived through the AIDS crisis in the 80s. I know what that despair was like, and I've been taken back the last few weeks about how similar the feeling of today feels like that in the early 80s. We just didn't know what was going on. But the thing that got us through all that was the beautiful joy of community and helping. And we took care of our own. Agencies were set up to help people homebound with AIDS keep their pets. And I think that's what's going to happen now. We will celebrate our communities, invite anyone else that wants to join us. That would be great. But it's really important right now to be joyful and beautiful and try your best, because it's just otherwise we're going to drown.
Yeah, I so agree with that. So, well, let's get back to your story, which is full of joy. Amy
I have a question. I read that one of the first collections you did, you bought some T-shirt material. You bought a bunch of material and pitched it or sold, or you not pitched it, but you actually sold it to, was it Nordstrom or Neiman Marcus? And
one of my first customers. I had my grandmother had bought. There was a Ben Franklin or something that was going out of business. She bought all the dye boxes for me. So I got this giant box of like every color of dye. So I went and bought 50 yards of thermal fabric, like for thermal shirts, and made the clothing out of that and hand dyed it all in my bathtub. I was gray to my elbows for about a year. Having not learned about gloves, apparently. So it was magic, but it was my entire career and my entire existence is that. It's just, my mom always knew I was going to be late home on garbage day. I just loved digging around in what's here and trying to come up with something new, because which is now, since we focus so much on kids' creativity through our new Smarts and Crafts collection, until we can make reuse a natural way, a natural inclusion into creativity, I don't know what's going to happen in a positive way. It's nothing but scariness. So we'll just like change the idea of it. But I was brought up like that. We just there was a TV out in front of our neighbor's house that I went and got my mom, and we put it on the wagon and took it home and took the TV part out, and we put the sink in it, and we made a new bureau for our bathroom.
So I want to just share a quick story about my little grandson Holden, he calls himself an autist already. He's 6, and he comes home from school often with his pockets full of stuff that he's foraged around on the parking lot during recess, and he tells Kenzie will unload his pockets with, and she's like, "What is all this stuff holding?" And he says, "Well, it's stuff of my projects, and I have to put it in my pockets because the teacher will take it away and throw it away." So, and I'm like, I just laugh because I'm like, oh my God, he is such a mini me because I can't go anywhere without picking up something, rocks or whatever it is.
The best habit. What a great, you're doing a great job. That kid sounds like he's going to be magical.
Yes.
Much to my daughter's chagrin, because she's more of a less is more kind of girl, and they come home from Mimi's house with all this. She calls it crap. I call it treasure.
But she's an artist too, so I'm sure deep down she probably loves it. But
I'm intrigued because you've got two sensibilities going. You've got muchness and spareness. So I bet we're going to see a new kind of. Some new frisson from your grandson. That's usually what does it when two things are bumping against each other. They both rub off a little bit and you get something brand new.
Yeah.
I know. I love that. Okay. So you go, Jamie.
Let me ask. So with this first collection that you did in your bathtub with your gray hands, you had the courage to reach out to Neiman's. That's a big step. I mean, that's a huge. Do you remember back did you just walk in with it, or did you have a connection, or because that's a big deal?
I had connections. I had a friend that was, I had friends. Everybody in Dallas kind of knew each other, and I was the only person that didn't work at Neiman's. Like everybody else I knew worked in display, or some people had corporate jobs, but mostly they were in the kind of more helpful situation. So it was an interesting time. Creativity was okay, but my friend ran into my friend was with his boss, a buyer there, and they ran into me on the street as I was going, I think, to see Bendel's or something, and so they kind of like mentioned it, and then we got together. But it never once occurred to me not to just do something. It just,
that's great.
You just have to. I guess I just didn't really care what people thought so much about it. So, and if you didn't like it, that was fine. I mean, I don't like everything I do, but that's cool. I mean, I don't like everything either, not just mine. But so, if it seems sort of natural and reasonable, right? So, if you let that be,
absolutely,
let it be, then you can just kind of do your own stuff.
I think maybe one of the reasons you feel that way, at least this is my thinking, and I kind of feel this way too, is because you're such a maker, and you just, if something doesn't work out, you're just going to move on to the next thing, the next creative endeavor. And it's just going to keep, one thing builds onto the next, and you take little nuggets from each one and you just add it to the next thing. Or
it's just the toolbox shifts. I'm the exact same thinker and person no matter what I do. But because I was brought up with the idea that you can do anything, the idea of it, I know that this is not exactly true, but I certainly feel like I can try anything. It just it made it really easy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. So
So
when you decided to leave the fashion world, what led up to that pivot?
Well, there was a couple of things. I'm pretty low key and pretty introverted. So I could pop my face out and do that kinds of things, but it was a colossal amount of effort for me and a big effort for me. So like I wasn't a natural fit for it, but because of we had our own factory in Texas and we just could make stuff ourselves. And I would go back and work with all these kind of dead industries. Like sublimation printing was like a thing for t-shirts in the 70s. It was completely gone by the 90s. But I found a hosiery manufacturer that could still do that. I didn't think of that as a limitation. I just made what I could, which was exploring all these other versions of things that weren't in the industry, traditionally in the industry. And it gave us a huge leg up because our toolbox was completely unique. It didn't have anybody else's tools in it.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And so, but you made a decision partly because you're an introvert, but I'm sure there were other things. And when you did make that decision, were you, I guess knowing now more about your personality, you probably weren't anxious at all, and you were probably ready to explore something else right away?
Yeah.
Or did you take a break? Or
I had a coffee break in my head for about 4 years, but I built so many things during that time period. But it was super fun. And because, I had the great luxury of working for myself and my family business when nobody ever needed anything I ever did. So if I was going to do it, I better be sincere and bring it. And if it wasn't mattering to me in those same ways and the explorations weren't fulfilling, it seemed like a charade to carry on. And I didn't have like 12 diffusion lines and all this other stuff that, people would, plenty of people get very angry at me that we stopped. There was a lot of other people that had built businesses like perfume and shoes and that kind of stuff. So I'm sorry that was a problem. I get it. But
around your brand, you mean?
Around the brand.
Kind of that stuff. Those people weren't super psyched. But I don't regret it at all. And at the same time, the thing I heard endlessly was, it went on for too long. I love what you do. I could never afford it. These things were glued together, these two sentences. And I got very tired of it because I just thought, doing stuff for rich people is deeply boring, and only for rich people, and I wasn't really, that's not my sensibility. So I wanted to do something that had all that heart in it, but that was not attached to anyone being disincluded because of money. So we started focusing on kids' creativity. And that's been such a rewarding, adventure. It's shape shifted many times through this adventure. But the thing about it is it makes a difference. I know the teenage kids now that experience this stuff. I've seen the kids at the Cooper Hewitt events. It's not pretend. This is not pretend. Maybe that looks like they're gluing popsicle sticks and those kinds of stuff, but there's structural integrity that's required when you're gluing popsicle sticks. There's form, there's volume, there's visual design, physical design. There's so many tenets in this that we know. So we've tried to set up these smarts and crafts kits to be as friendly for young makers, but also for caregivers and families, because I'm sure you've stepped on a Lego before in your life, and this is not great. So having place to return, teaching good working habits is just as important as encouraging great design. Because I've written chapters on cleaning up in some of my kids' books because it's really important. But cleaning up also means like sorting out your supplies, picking up the trash, and putting it in the other place so you can reuse it later. So I don't know. It's a very, very rewarding situation, and I'm kind of surprised that we feel like we're on our own island over here. I just would have thought there'd be more going on.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I was going to say, first of all, Todd, I say thank you. And I'm a new grandmother, so hopefully, like Lori, I will be bragging on the creativity of my grandson and future grandchildren in a few years. But I had very creative kids too, and I think I love the fact that you've returned that craft table to everyone else's home or dining room table or to their living rooms, because I think as a parent, we got going certainly in the 90s and the 2000s down the tech world, and everything became very electronic. I remember saying to friends, our Christmas tree, underneath the Christmas tree, you'd have these bigger boxes when the kids were little, or crafts or things like that. And then the boxes became very small because they were all the tech equipment. And to me, that's sad, because to what you described, even growing up, we need to have the ability to use our hands to be creative, to think outside of the box, to create just from your heart. And I think that lets you look at the world a whole lot differently. So what I love so many things about what you said, moving away from an exclusive product to an inclusive product, and certainly bringing it back to the children, because the children will then grow and be able to see things in a beautiful, colorful way. So it was a huge pivot. Yay.
Exciting. Creativity when I was 9 the roots and the base is still there, but the toys are different. And this digital world that we're in cannot be ignored and is brilliant and fascinating. But
It
the
is.
most exciting thing is when these analog and digital experiences hold hands, and then new things come from them. Like for instance,
Yes.
I'm editing this morning a stop motion video on the simplest of editing equipment now that used to be where you'd have to go to Sony to edit. Now it's, I'm doing it in my living room, but we're still editing stop motion that we shot frame by frame and moved. So it's this merge of, there's the perfect example of this merge, but we can't extract one or the other because it's not going to make a balanced human any longer.
Right.
You cannot be away from electronics. It just doesn't work like that any longer.
It's interesting. Here, wait, let me just jump in and then I know, see, Lori and I get so excited. We talk over each other. I spend the summers in Chautauqua, New York, and we have brilliant speakers that come in. And I'm recalling as you're speaking, we had a gentleman come in who was in charge of the Shakespeare program in inner city Washington. And he said, look, I'm not trying to create more actors and actresses. I'm trying to create more scientists and mathematicians, because if we have kids who can embrace the arts and embrace creativity, they look at the world differently. They look outside of the box. And that's exactly what you're creating for these children is, there's analog, there's both of them, the analog and the virtual and yay. I'm just thrilled. And Lori, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Lori had something to say too.
Well, I was just going to share that I was a very shy kid. And so creating was always such a safe place for me to, hole up in. And I watch that now in, again, little Holden, our grandson. He has some anxiety issues. And like I taught him how to crochet.
Oh,
and
great.
He will sit there for hours crochet. He only can chain stitch so far because he hasn't mastered the second row, but he'll be at our house and he will chain stitch all night long till it goes down our entire hallway. He'll sit by his pillow when we go to bed and then wakes up in the morning and goes at it again. And I can see how calming it is to him. So I think, there are so many mental health struggles with young people. And so I feel like maybe getting away from technology and social media and being on the phone all the time and, playing around with popsicle sticks or yarn or baking a pie it's so healthy for people to do more of that.
It rejuvenates, it literally repairs. So we need to honor ourselves and support our families by allowing that time, encouraging that time. The other facet of that that's really important for me is gardening and outdoor living. Until the respect that we can learn for the plant world and all its synergy is just fascinating. Actually, that's my next book. I'm working on a garden book. I've been working on it for a long time, so I'm pretty excited about this. It's not
gardening through your eyes is going to be fantastic because your garden is like no one else's garden.
It's really fun. I'm having a great time. But I think that when you can fold in the parts that make us great humans for ourselves, the part where you just you're well when it's feeling well, they're pretty much informed by the experiences when you surround yourself with, creativity and nature and encouraging. And you know what? It's not everybody. We're all speaking that it's very normal that we grew up like we did, and it's not. We're really lucky. So I find it really important to try to figure out how do we encourage people that didn't have those two parents that were clapping for our the way we rearrange the plates for dinner, and like any creative effort was like yes, keep going. I lived in in an improv house where it was always yes and in case it was safety, but if it was like an adventure, sure, let's try it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I teach at a lot of retreats and I've had people like one friend brought her longtime friend last year and she had spent 30 years as an accountant and had never made art before.
Ah.
And she, it's just so interesting to me when people like that attend my retreats, and they'll say, well, I'm not an artist. Well, I'm not creative and all of that. And I always say, well, I'm not a saxophone player, but if I had the passion for it and I wanted to learn, I could be that. So there's this, I don't know, some people think you either have that or you don't. And
Yeah.
I really
Right.
don't believe that at all. I believe we are all creative souls in some way, and everybody has
Absolutely.
different
Agree.
passions.
Well, even
Yeah.
creativity in the linear arts is important. I'd like to think these efforts make artists and and painters or whatever you'd like to be, but I know they also encourage to be FDA screeners and DNA magnifiers. There's all kinds of other things that are not traditionally attached to art making that benefit from this kind of creativity.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
everything benefits.
Absolutely.
Everything and everyone benefits from creative efforts, even slightly adjacent.
Absolutely. So today, I know that you had the Handmade Modern at Target for a while. I don't believe that's there any longer.
Yeah,
Correct?
we've moved on with that. And what is so exciting to me is actually this week we're launching our new, we're calling it our Ultimate Smarts and Crafts Kits. And we've tried to make it, you've heard me, I'm trying to make it easy for the parents as well for the kids. And working with these retail stores, they just don't allow us to help make it easier. They really, they have a lot of ideas, and businesses kind of really shaky in a lot of these big box stores. So we're moving away and up for another adventure, which is trying to go, like I mentioned earlier in this, going to our community. And we're opening, I'm so excited about it. It's a kind of a village where we only are selling a handful of things, but they're all ultimate kits. So there's like a whole bunch of on the goes or ultimate craft kit. There's these mega things with 6,000 pieces in it. They're really
Oh
fun.
my gosh.
Yeah, should you not be able to afford any of that, right now there's 40 something pieces of content between DIY stuff to just like demystification about literally any facet to do with creativity. And it's at smartsandcrafts.com. And it just, for me, it did everything right, because if you want to purchase stuff, that's great. We'd be happy to that you got it. But I don't want anyone to feel like they can't come here because they don't have money. So there's actually way more to do that doesn't have to do with money. And I think that feels very good to me.
Oh my gosh. I cannot wait to check this out. It's launched already,
I cannot wait.
or it will
Friday.
be launched?
I'm not sure when you guys go, but it launches this Friday. What day is that?
It will be launched, and we will make sure that we've got a link for our listeners too. So absolutely, and that is fabulous. That is just incredible that you, and I love that. I love the inclusivity that you have and that you're creating in this latest chapter. And
well, that's very.
There's been some big pivots.
Well, I recognize them looking like that, but they've not been in any way like that to me. They just are literally they're just in a funny way in my head. It's like I'm standing in a circle, a big circular table that just keeps spinning around me, and whatever's in front of me, I make stuff out of it. So,
I love that. I need to do I got to do a drawing or a painting of that.
that's what it looks like.
I just had a visual come in my head of that.
It kind of makes sense, right? Kind of makes sense. So in my head, that's what it looks like. So it might be, scissors and fabric, or it might be popsicle sticks, or it might be wiring to build. Like, I'm coming to you from a house I just completed a month ago. I built for my dad. So it's really important to keep it moving,
Let's take a quick minute and thank our amazing sponsors. Our podcast is proudly brought to you today by Jet Creative and Urban Stems. Jet Creative is a women-owned marketing firm committed to community and empowerment since 2013. Are you ready to rebloom and build a website or start a podcast? Visit jetcreative.com/podcast to kickstart your journey. They will help you bloom in ways you never imagined. And bonus, our listeners get an exclusive discount when you mention ReBloom. And a huge thanks to Urban Stems, your go-to and our go-to source for fresh, gorgeous bouquets and gifts delivered coast to coast. Use Bloom Big 20 and save 20% on your next order. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at ReBloom Podcast. Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to you for joining us today.
I've also noticed that you have other creative people in your family, like I think it's your nephew, Presley.
Oh yeah,
And
Yes.
oh my God, the things he's making. And
Amazing.
So it looks like it's like, you mentioned your grandmother was also creative. So it seems like there's a lineage to this,
There
or
is. It's
in the family DNA.
It was kind of sweet. You're speaking of my nephew Presley, who's an outrageous talent, like a crazy gifted guy, but he grew up the same way I did. With my mother, basically raised him.
Oh, really?
And I mean, my brother
How
was
about
he's
that?
my brother's son, and he was very present too. I'm not trying to say that was not it, but he grew up in the factory. Literally, he had a playroom next door to my mom's office. So the first things he ever saw were people making things. So he's very unusual. But I've read a funny review that said he's not so much of a Nepo baby, but just seems to be a really talented family. It's like, well, we're really lucky
Yeah.
because there's a lot of practice in my family and a lot of freedom, and that led to a lot of creativity.
You know, we've interviewed some other people on the podcast who are very, very creative, and their parents, in looking out for them, thought that steering them towards something far more practical was the way to go. And several of them, that's why they've been on the podcast. They decided,
Yeah.
well, okay, I'm going that route because I thought I had to do that. But then they finally came to terms with, that's really not how I want to live my life. There's something deeper inside me that I want to explore. And so that's really the crux of this podcast, which you're a little bit of a different animal because like you're one continuous pivot, I think. Like probably.
Simultaneous pivot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
But in the
it's
Go
a
ahead,
nice
go
way
ahead.
to go about things. It's deeply irregular, and people often don't know what to make of you or to do with you if you're interfacing with like normal situations. But it's worth the trade. And the thing that I learned very on, that the only thing that counts is during the making, that saved my life, because I've never been
Yeah.
attached to. I mean, lots of things I've made have been disasters at retail. But that to me didn't matter that much. So it did to others, I promise you, but not to me so much.
Well,
But what a gift to have parents, though, and I'm going back to what you said earlier, that there was always the word yes, please create, yes, and celebration of what you were doing, regardless of what it was. And I think the fact that there was always a yes in front of you encourages that creativity, and I love that you're doing that for these kids too. This is brilliant.
Thank
so
you.
I guess what we maybe hope to do with this podcast is if you're not getting that yes from maybe your family or people in your life, maybe find a way to say yes to yourself. And if something's really, really grumbling or rumbling inside that you want to explore, no matter what it is, we just really want to encourage people to do it and just stick your toe in the water and try, because it's amazing how I believe the universe opens up to that, and things will come your way that you really did not expect.
It's like you're writing an invitation to a party, when you focus like that, because it's just anything is possible and it could all go. And the thing about it is, it's when you adapt to a life of that being like the reason that you're kind of alive, it's a nice life and you don't get so dented. But there's one thing I've always encouraged people to when they want to try something new, and it's this really almost too simple thing, and it's just starting starts. So if you don't know where you're going or you don't have everything in place, that doesn't matter. It's much better that you just start something, start one facet of it, start writing it down, start making it, start dreaming it, whatever the start means to you. And you'll just be thrilled at how the doors fly open. But it's, for some reason, a lot of people have confidence and bravery issues starting. You're worried, am I not good at this? Are people going to comment? And it doesn't matter if you're good at it, because the only thing that matters is that you're present while you're making it, and you're open to the ethers or however you think about being fueled by creativity, then it counts. And you're going to be the best mom or dad or sister or teacher or anything you can be when you sort of have that openness as a foundation, I found. So getting to devote so much time to kids' creativity, or in the case of my books, like you mentioned, Alexander Gerard, that's my new book that just came out with Fiden, and to getting to shine a flashlight on these truly like extraordinary, masterful, joyful entities. I mean, it's pretty great.
Yeah, I can't wait to buy that book. That's on my Christmas list.
Oh, it's lovely. It's lovely.
Oh, yeah, I think I'm going to ask for several of your books because I have some, but I don't have all of them. So,
okay.
I think everybody should ask for his books for Christmas and for the holidays. Absolutely. And I'm so glad that the kits will be out too, and the new site will be up too before the holidays too. So we'll make sure, I think what you just said is important too. So you both, I create in a different way. I create through the florals. I create through my photography. I often will say to Lori, I wish my hand would do what my brain wants it to. I can see it, but I can see it through the lens, and I can also see it when I'm styling or when I'm with the florals. And I think what you're saying is just important, because as I started on the journey, I laugh. I started with a watercolor class, and I was really, really, oops, we've got lots of bells and whistles today. I know it's the story of our podcast.
It's okay.
That's okay. It's all right. It just adds a little spice to it.
It's a little punctuation.
But it is. And I had started down that path, and I knew that I loved it. To your point, I just started. I started that creativity, and it opened the whole door. And I didn't know where it was going to go, and certainly I wouldn't have told you that it was going to lead me to a path of photography and floral photography. But I did know that I needed to have that creativity in my life, and that's what we hope that our guests or our listeners really know, that whatever it may be, if it's cooking, if it's gardening, if it's drawing, writing, whatever it may be, to just keep exploring and to start. And I love how you said that. Just do it for you. No judgment, do it.
And the more that you can approach everything with that pathway, it's just incredible. It's like fertilizer on everything. You just get better everything.
Yeah.
Because you're open. It's really just a matter of kind of staying out of your way of sorts, harder to do than say. But, in the end, it is just really a lot of opinions, and we're in subjective art. So, we might both like it or we might both not like it, but we're both right because it's subjective, and that's just fine. So if you can just kind of just honor a few of the base tenets of the deal, then you can get through it pretty easily. Not that it doesn't hurt when somebody you want to like what you do doesn't, or, but here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
Amazing.
always going to be a given, but you can always, I love when I teach the people that kind of gather together, they know what my work is like, and they know it's going to be about color and, whimsy and all of that. And it's just fun when you're with those kindred spirits, and not everyone's going to be like that or see things that way. And that's okay. But everybody has their tribe, or everybody has their people that are going to connect to things they're doing. And even if they don't, like you said, I just love the process. The process is so fun. And, I've painted over canvases because 2 years later, I hate it. And I'm like, oh, I think I'm just going to paint over that and see what it looks like now. And it's that's the joy, is just the process, the making. And I love that you're working with kids because I think kids are masterful at that.
Oh,
Yeah.
You know,
always.
somebody was, they don't judge. They don't have the preconceived notion of what the drawing has to be. And I just love watching their brains work.
It's incredible. I feel like I witnessed sort of an unlearning with kids because they just are so vibrant, and then they lose their confidences because of peer pressures and other things as they get going. But the ones that can flip that, where it just gets bigger as the older you get, that's where you get this magic,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's not just fields like fashion and the arts either. It's culinary stuff, DNA studies. I mean, it's all the same kind of creativity and
AI.
Yeah.
AI, yes.
Computer sciences, all of it. It's all,
Well, it's all fascinating, and I love that there's all these new things. But the thing, we are humans, and we're in our bodies, and this reward from creativity is real, and it doesn't matter whatever happens on the outside and all the additions, the digital additions. That's true. The thing on the inside sticks and stays. So we just have to welcome these new things in and invite them to play with us in a way that doesn't diminish that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. This has been the most incredible interview with you. Thank you, Todd, so very much for your time. Oh my gosh.
I want to build with you or do crafts with you.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I want to come garden with you. I'll come take pictures of your florals.
You're a little closer to me than Lori is, but I love that we're just visiting 3 different states. But thank you so much. It was just lovely to be with you. I so appreciate your insights and your kind words. So, and thank you for doing this. I hope that people will be encouraged by hearing your stories about reblooming.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. Peace, love, and rebloom.
Life is too short not to follow your passions, so go out there and let your heart plant you where you are meant to be and grow your joy.
We will be right here sharing more incredible stories of reinvention with you. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode of ReBloom.
Until next time, I'm Jamie Jameson.
And I'm Lori Siebert.
Peace, love, and rebloom, dear friends.